Welcome to tonight's story. Let your body find stillness. Let your thoughts slow down. Tonight, we travel far across oceans of time into a realm of marble temples, golden sunlight, and deep shadows. We journey to ancient Greece, to a place where gods walked among mortals, where love, desire, and vengeance burned brighter than the sun. But not all love ends in happiness. Some are cursed. Tonight, we unravel the most tragic love stories of Greek mythology. Stories carved into the heart of history. Stories where passion led to ruin, where love turned into legend and heartbreak, into myth. Close your eyes now. Let the past embrace you. Let sleep find you. And let the stories begin. The song that turned back time. The tragedy of Orpheus and Eurydice long ago. In the cradle of myth and marble, where the gods still spoke to the wind and the stars blinked slowly in the eternal blue of the heavens, there lived a man whose music made the world weep. His name was Orpheus. Some say he was the son of a muse, Calliope, the muse of epic poetry. Others whispered that his father was Apollo himself, god of the sun and music. Whatever the truth, Orpheus was not like other men. From the moment he touched the lyre, the world around him grew still, as if it too wanted to hear what his soul had to say. When he played, birds would stop in mid-flight, their wings gently stalling as if caught in a dream. Wild beasts of the forest would sit beside him, their snarling jaws at peace, lulled into calm. The wind would slow, the trees would lean forward, the rivers would hush. Even the stones, cold, lifeless things, seemed to sigh. But it was not until Orpheus met her that the music found its true reason. Her name was Eurydice. She was no goddess, no queen, no divine oracle. Just a girl with soft laughter and bare feet, who walked through the woods as if she belonged to the earth itself. She did not wear gold or silk, but when Orpheus saw her, the music inside him changed. It became warm, fierce, unbearably alive, and no one could quite remember how they met. The tales all differ. Some say she heard him playing by a riverbank and was drawn in like a leaf caught in the current. Others say it was he who saw her first, bathing in a clearing as the sun kissed the water. But what mattered most was that they saw each other, truly saw, and something ancient and powerful bloomed between them. Their love was not made of drama or thunder. It was something deeper, quiet, steady, like a root growing beneath the soil, unseen but unshakable. Each morning, Orpheus would wake with a melody in his chest and play for her, and Eurydice would laugh, her fingers tangled in his hair, her eyes holding that endless look of someone who believes in tomorrow. And then one day, he asked her to marry him. There was no grand speech, no divine omen, only a flower pressed into her palm, and a song played under the boughs of an old olive tree. She said yes with a smile that made the world brighter, and the forest sang with them that day. The wedding was simple. Wildflowers, laughter, music that made even the gods pause for a moment, listening from Mount Olympus as mortals danced below. But fate, cruel and quiet, was already writing the end on the day of their wedding. While Orpheus sang to the trees and guests, Eurydice wandered into the fields. She danced barefoot, her hair undone, humming the melody he had composed just for her. The grass, warm beneath her feet. The sun, a golden kiss on her shoulder. She stepped lightly. And then, a gasp out a hiss out a viper, hidden in the tall grass, coiled and struck, The bite was quick, almost silent. She stumbled once, twice. Her fingers reached for something, anything, but there was only the sky. She fell, and the music stopped. When Orpheus found her, her eyes were already glass, her lips pale, the warmth of her body fading like the last note of a dying song that he screamed, not with anger, but with a pain that broke the silence of the forest. Even the wind recoiled. Birds fled from the trees. Somewhere, in the far distance, it is said Apollo himself turned his face away. Orpheus buried her beneath the olive tree, the same tree where he had first asked her to be his. And then he stopped playing. Days turned into nights. Nights into weeks he sat in silence, the lyre across his lap untouched. His hands, once so alive, now trembled like withered leaves. But grief is a restless thing that it does not sit still, and Orpheus could not accept goodbye that he remembered every story his mother told him, of the underworld, of the land beyond the river, of the shadows where the dead walk in silence, forgotten by time. And he made a choice that he would go there. He would go to the underworld, he would find her, and he would bring her back, and no mortal had ever dared such a thing. None had ever returned. But Orpheus was not just a mortal, he was music. He walked to the mouth of the world, where the earth splits and the air grows cold, where the river sticks winds like a serpent, and Cerberus, the three-headed hound, guards the gate to death. As he approached, Cerberus growled, a sound that shook the stones. But Orpheus played, just once, not a single note, and Cerberus lay down. Tears welled in the beast's eyes that he walked deeper, through the caverns of despair, past the souls who wandered aimlessly, whispering names they no longer remembered. The underworld was dark, cold, vast, but Orpheus's music burned like a flame in the shadows. When he reached the throne of Hades and Persephone, he bowed, not out of fear, but reverence. That he played no words, no plea, only a song. A song of sunlight and laughter. Of her hands in his, of the way she looked when she slept, of mornings and wildflowers and the hope of forever. He played for love, and the underworld listened. The Furies wept. Charon, the ferryman, dropped his oar. Even Persephone, queen of shadows, turned away, hiding the tear that traced her cheek. And Hades, stern, unmoved god of the dead, spoke. "You may take her," he said, "but only if you lead the way. She will follow in silence, and you must not look back until you both have left this realm." Orpheus nodded. He turned and walked. Behind him, silence. But he could feel her. He knew her footsteps. He remembered the way her presence warmed the air. Each step was a storm, and the exit it neared. But with every breath, a whisper of doubt crept in. What if the gods had tricked him? What if she wasn't really there? What if he walked alone? He reached the edge, and just before the light touched his face, he turned, and there she was, Eurydice, eyes wide, lips parted, and then she vanished. No screamed at no sound, just a look. Of sorrow. Of love, and then nothing. She was pulled back into the dark. That he reached for her, called out, fell to his knees, but the deal was broken, and the gates closed. He tried to go back, tried to play again, but the gods do not repeat themselves, and Eurydice was gone. The song that turned back time. The tragedy of Orpheus and Eurydice, Part 2. The gates of the underworld stood silent, and O voice answered Orpheus's pleased, and O God showed mercy. The shadows swallowed her, and Orpheus stood at the threshold, alone. That he remained there for hours, perhaps days. Time has no rhythm in that place. The underworld is a land without clocks or stars, where memory itself loses its shape. But Orpheus remembered, he remembered every curve of her smile, the breathless sound of her laugh, the quiet way she leaned against his shoulder when the world grew soft. He remembered, and that memory ached. He had come so far. He had broken every rule of man and God, carved open the world's oldest sorrow, all for one chance. And it had slipped from his fingers, like mist. He had looked, that single moment, fueled not by mistrust, but by love, by desperation, had destroyed everything to so he walked away from the gates. Away from the world of the dead, he walked back into the sun. But the sun no longer warmed him. He walked through forests where he once played his songs, where trees once swayed to his melodies. Now they stood still. That he wandered into cities, where once he had been a legend. Now he was a ghost. He did not eat. He did not speak. His music, once filled with joy and beauty, became something else that he played. Yes, he played still, but his notes were drenched in grief, in longing so pure that even mountains wept. Farmers left offerings at his feet. Mothers whispered his name like a prayer. Lovers held one another tighter when they heard his songs, knowing how easily love could be taken. And yet, Orpheus did not weep. His tears had dried in the underworld. What poured from him now was deeper. He wandered from village to village, never staying long. Not because he was unwelcome, but because everything reminded him of her. Every sunset was the color of her dress. Every breeze carried her voice. Even silence was a memory. Point one evening, as the sky bled into dusk, Orpheus stood by a river. He played again, slowly, softly. His fingers brushed the strings like a man reaching out for something just out of reach. A group gathered. They did not speak. They simply listened. And when he finished, he lowered his lyre. I saw her, he whispered, to no one and to everyone. I saw her, and she was reaching for me. Some say his voice cracked. Others say the river stilled to hear him. She wasn't afraid. She didn't blame me. I saw it in her eyes. She knew. I loved her. But love, even the truest kind, cannot undo what the gods have written. And so, Orpheus walked on. As years passed, he grew thinner. His hair fell in long strands. He refused the company of women. Many tried, daughters of kings, priestesses, nymphs from the glens. But his heart was buried under that olive tree. He belonged to no one, only to memory. And then, one day, Orpheus disappeared. There are many stories of how it happened. Some say he was torn apart by wild beasts, maddened by the rage of being denied. Some say Maenads, worshippers of Dionysus, attacked him when he refused their advances, his body cast into the river, still clutching his lyre. But there is another tale, quieter, gentler. They say that he walked to the edge of the world, and there, beneath a sky full of fading stars, he sang one last song. That it was not a song of loss, nor a plea to the gods. That it was a lullaby, the lullaby for Eurydice. He played as the sky turned violet, as birds stirred from their sleep, as dew kissed the grass. He played, and then he vanished. Some say he faded into mist. Others say he simply stepped into shadow, but no one saw him again. And his lyre, it was found weeks later, washed ashore on a quiet bank, untouched, still strung. And when the wind blew just right, it played itself a soft, sorrowful tune. The gods, they say, wept. Zeus lifted Orpheus's lyre into the stars, where it became a constellation. Lyra s. Oh, that all might remember that once there was a man who loved so deeply, he followed death itself for one more moment. Even now, travelers look up into the night sky, and when they see the strings of Lyra glittering in the darkness, they think of him and of her, thought of the way love does not end. Even when the world does, of how one note can echo through eternity, of how silence can be louder than any song. The story of Orpheus and Eurydice did not end in JOYT, did not end in reunion or peace. But perhaps it never really ended at all, because love like that, the kind that dares to cross the boundary between life and death, does not vanish. It simply changes shape. It becomes song. It becomes myth. It becomes memory. And in memory, they are together still, hand in hand. In some quiet corner of the underworld. Or perhaps just beyond the stars, where no one ever looks back and the song never fades. Ambient harp continues, now softer, more dreamlike. Let this tale be your lullaby. Let it wrap around you like a gentle cloak. Close your eyes now. Breathe slow. There is nothing more you need to hold on to, not. Tonight, Orpheus has sung his last. Eurydice is home, and you are safe. Let go. Let sleep take you. And if you dream, may you dream of forests and lyres. Of hands held tight. Of love so deep, not even death could silence it. Good night. Music fades into silence. The flame across the water. The tragedy of Hero and Leander. Tonight, we drift toward the sea. Let the waves rock you gently. Let your breath fall into rhythm. Close your eyes and imagine an ancient coast, far across the Aegean, where the stars once watched over lovers too bold for fate and too beautiful for mercy. This is the story of Hero and Leander, the tale of flame and water, of longing and distance, and of a love cursed not by gods, but by the storm. Let's begin. Once, on the edge of the world where sea-kissed stone stood a solitary tower, and in it, alone, devoted, and cloaked in mystery, lived a young woman named Hero. She was a priestess of Aphrodite, bound by vows of chastity and solitude. Each day she prayed to love, lighting candles and anointing altars with oil. But though her voice spoke ritual, her heart ached for more. She wore a veil by day, but by night she stood at her tower's peak, wind brushing her dark hair, eyes cast far across the narrow strait toward the city of Abydos, glittering like a second sky on the other shore. And across that very water, there lived a young man named Leander, a poet, a dreamer, a boy whose hands were calloused from labor, but whose soul was smooth as glass. Point one day, during a spring festival, their paths crossed. Hero had descended from her tower to walk among the crowd, her veil pulled low. Flowers hung from every gate. Music danced through the air. And as she moved through the people, he saw her, not the priestess, not the servant of the goddess, but the girl beneath the veil. He followed her through the crowd, not rudely, not boldly, but with a kind of reverence, as though afraid even to look too long. When finally their eyes met, time, by some strange mercy, paused, and the world fell silent. They spoke briefly. A few words, a glance, and then she was gone. But something ancient had begun. Leander could not forget her, and neither could she forget him. Every night after, he stood on his shore, looking toward the tower, And every night, she climbed to its top and lit a lamp, a single flame, a silent message, a promise. Leander watched it flicker in the dark, and with each passing night, the urge grew inside him, an ache not even poetry could soothe. And so, one night, he dove into the sea, clothed in nothing but hope. He cut through the cold water, each stroke fueled by longing, by the vision of her face lit by candlelight. And when he reached the other side, soaked and shaking, Hero was waiting. Their first embrace was soft, trembling. A prayer answered too soon. And in the tower, high above the world, they kissed. They were cautious at first, only once a week, then twice, and then every night. Each time, Hero lit her lamp. Each time, Leander swam across the strait, led by that single flame. They met in secret, spoke of distant futures, of forbidden wishes, of love that defied gods and duty. But the sea does not forgive boldness, and the gods never turn their gaze for long. One night, a storm was brewing. The winds howled like wounded beasts. The waves crashed with fury. Hero lit her lamp, shielding it with trembling hands. But below, on the opposite shore, Leander looked across the angry waters and saw nothing, and no light, only black. Only rain. He waited they an hour. But love, as always, pulled harder than reason. And so, once more, he dove. The waves punished him. The wind screamed his name. Still he swam, blind in the dark, his heart beating only for the thought of her, waiting, cold, alone, atop the tower. But in the rage of that night, no flame could hold. The lamp flickered and died, and with it, the path was lost. Leander swam in circles, calling for her, but the sea did not answer. Only the cold, only the pull. When morning came, the sea laid his body gently at the tower's base. Hero descended, bare feet on wet stone, her hair unbound, and when she saw him, her scream shattered the dawn. They say she cradled him for hours. They say the goddess herself wept that day. And then, without a word, Hero climbed to the top of the tower once more, the same place she had lit the flame. And from there, she jumped into the sea, into the silence, into the same current that had taken him. They were buried together. Though no temple marks their names, the sea remembers. And when the wind howls over the Hellespont, when the moon is high and the stars shimmer across the water like scattered silver, you might still see a flicker that a tiny flame, dancing on the waves, that a light for the lost, that a curse and a vow. The final echo of Hero and Leander. Two lovers who defied the ocean and drowned in its arms. The music softens now. Ocean waves slow. Let this story carry you. Let the waves rock you into sleep. Some loves burn too bright to last, but their light lives on. I in the wind. I in the water. I in your dreams tonight. Good night. The Sorceress and the Hero. The curse of Medea and Jason. Long before the winds of Greece whispered through marble ruins, long before names like Jason and Medea were etched in the stones of memory, there was only a ship and a storm. The Argo, with sails like wings, she glided across the ocean, her prow shaped like prophecy. Jason stood at the helm, not yet a hero, not yet a traitor, just a man, young, desperate, hungry for glory. He had been promised a kingdom, promised that if he brought back the golden fleece, his throne would be restored. But the fleece was far, guarded in the distant land of Colchis. a place where the sun rose early and the forests whispered secrets. And in that land, behind high walls and dark temples, lived a girl, Medea, not just a princess, a priestess of Hecate, a sorceress born under stars that did not forgive. She could speak to plants, make fire dance across water. Her breath could summon winds, and her silence could break them. But beneath the magic, there was a heart that a young woman raised on omens and ritual, taught that love was a tool, that men were to be feared, that power was the only protection. And then she saw him, Jason, the foreigner, the golden-haired stranger whose eyes burned like ambition and whose voice made even the sacred crows stop cawing. He came with honeyed words and a gaze that asked for trust. He told her of his quest, of the fleece, of the throne that was stolen. He told her she was beautiful. She should have turned away. She should have called the guards, whispered a curse, turned him into a beast. But she didn't. That night, she dreamed of him. And the next day, when her father summoned her to weave a spell of protection around the fleece, her hands trembled. He met her in secret behind the temple, under the sycamores. They spoke in half sentences, in touches not yet forbidden, in glances too long to be innocent. He told her he needed her, and in that moment, she believed him. She gave him the potion that would protect him from fire and blade. She whispered the words that calmed the sleepless serpent guarding the fleece. She taught him which herbs would mask his scent, which stones would silence his steps. And when it was done, when the fleece was in his hands and the guards cried betrayal, she ran with him. They fled through night and blood. Her father chased them, sent ships, cursed the sea, and to buy time, Medea did the unthinkable. She lured her younger brother into the woods, hugged him close, whispered something kind, then killed him. She scattered his limbs into the waves so her father would have to stop to gather them. Jason never asked why, he only held her hand tighter. They sailed for days, weeks, faced monsters, tempests, jealous gods. And each time, it was her magic that saved them. Her cunning, her silence. They arrived in Iolcus, Jason's home, but no feast waited for them. No crown, no welcome. Jason's uncle, the king, refused to step down. Medea again used her gifts. She tricked the king's daughters into slicing him to pieces, promising she would make him young again if only they stirred his body with the right herbs. They did, and Jason watched as power shifted back to his hands. But blood brings exile. They were cast out. Again, they wandered, searching for safety, until they found Corinth. There, finally, they built a life. A quiet home. 2 sons. She planted a garden. He trained young men in swordplay. The years passed, and Medea began to forget the screams, the flames, the weight of betrayal. She believed maybe this was enough. Maybe love could last. But Jason was restless. He missed the throne, the hero's welcome, the gold. And then one day, he returned with news that he had been offered marriage. Not to Medea, the daughter of the king of Corinth, a political match. He said it was for the good of the family, that it would secure their sons' futures, that Medea would be cared for in her own home, far from the palace. She did not speak, not that day, not the next. She sat by the fire, combing her son's hair, humming old lullabies. She watched Jason ride past her window, wearing a new cloak, freshly shaven. And inside her, something old and ancient stirred. It was not jealousy, not rage. It was justice. She sent a dress to the princess, woven with gold threads, laced with herbs no one could name. The girl put it on, and the flames consumed her. The fabric clung to her skin, and no water could stop it. The king, trying to save her, burned beside her. Jason came home to ash, but Medea was not done. She stood before him in the courtyard, calm, hair braided, voice steady, and then she showed him the bodies of their sons, still, cold, eyes shut as if asleep. He screamed, but she did not flinch. "You betrayed me," she said, "so I returned the favor." Then she climbed aboard a chariot drawn by dragons and vanished. Some say she fled to Athens, married again, lived a quiet life. Others say she wandered the edges of the world, whispering to the winds, cursing men from the shadows. Jason lived out his days alone, no crown, no sons, no wife. He returned to the Argo, now rotting in a shipyard, sat beneath its splintered mast, whispered names into the wind, and one day the mast broke. It fell on him as he slept, and he died with no music, no fire, only silence. But Medea's name lived on, not as queen, not as wife, but as a curse, a warning, a whisper that power, once betrayed, becomes something the world cannot contain, and love, once shattered, becomes legend. Sleep now, and if you dream, dream of the sea, of gold glinting in the dark, of a woman with magic in her blood and heartbreak in her eyes, and know that even in myth, even among gods and heroes, love can ruin everything. Good night. The Queen Who Fell in Love. The Curse of Phaedra and Hippolytus. There was a palace on the edge of the sea, white stone, still air, and in the silence, a queen who never meant to love him, Phaedra, daughter of Minos, sister of Ariadne. A woman raised among curses and betrayal. A crown placed on her head before she understood what thrones truly cost. She had married a hero, Theseus. Yes, the same man who slayed the Minotaur. The man who once left her sister on an island with only stars for company. The man who aged with ambition, who ruled with a distant touch and a sharpened sword. And she tried to love him. She tried to wear her new name like silk, to pretend she did not see ghosts in the halls of Athens. She tried to raise his sons to forget that her body had once been promised to the gods, that her womb had been cursed by her bloodline, over and over again. And then she met him. Hippolytus, Theseus' son, not hers. Never hers. A boy who had grown into something sharp and beautiful. Eyes like thunderclouds, lips that never smiled. A heart that belonged only to the hunt, to Artemis, to the wild things of the forest. He would not look at women. He called love a weakness. He prayed each night to remain untouched, unburned by passion. And yet, Phaedra watched him, each morning as he walked past the olive trees, bow in hand, tunic stained with dust. She watched him spar, watched the way the other boys followed him, afraid and admiring. He said nothing to her, not cruel, not cold, just distant. But distance is where desire begins. It was not sudden, not a lightning strike, more like the slow burning of a candle you forgot you lit. She began to dream of him. Picture him at her table, not Theseus. Write his name in the sand with her foot, then erase it quickly. And then one morning, she collapsed. The palace thought her ill. Her servants brought herbs. Physicians whispered words she couldn't hear, but it wasn't fevered. It was fired. A fire in her chest. A hunger in her hands. She confessed to her nurse. "I love him," she said. The old woman's hands trembled. Your stepson? She nodded. It's a curse, the nurse whispered. It must be Aphrodite's doing. No heart would dare this on its own. But even the truth didn't help. Phaedra wasted away. She could not eat, could not sleep. Her nurse, fearing for her life, tried to help. She went to Hippolytus, told him the queen's secret, begged him to understand, asked only for mercy. But Hippolytus was cold that he recoiled. Disgust twisted his face that he cursed her, cursed love, cursed all women. And then he left. Phaedra was alone, shamed, exposed, with nothing left but her name. She stared at her reflection, at the crown that felt heavier than stone. At her fingers that once longed for his skin. And then she took up a quill. She wrote a letter, and in it she lied. She wrote that Hippolytus had tried to take her, that she had fought him, that her honor had been broken by his hands. She sealed it, left it by her bed, and then she took her life. Theseus returned to a palace draped in black. He found the letter. He read every word. And the rage in him boiled like molten iron that he did not question, he did not doubt, that he called upon Poseidon, his patron god, that he asked for vengeance. And the sea god answered. Hippolytus was riding his chariot by the cliffs when the earth cracked. Waves surged, that a sea beast rose, terrible and wild. The horses panicked. The chariot broke. His body was dragged across jagged stone. They found him barely breathing, bones shattered, blood soaking the sand. And in his last breaths, he cried out, not for justice, but for peace. It was Artemis who told the truth. She appeared to Theseus that night, her voice colder than death. She lied, she said. He was pure, that he loved no one. And now, because of your anger, he is lost. Theseus fell to his knees, too late, too broken. The palace stood quiet, Phaedra's name whispered only in shadows. Not as queen, not as wife, but as a wound, as a lesson. That love, when cursed, does not choose wisely. It burns, it ruins, it echoes. Even now, when you close your eyes and listen to the wind, you might hear her sigh, not for the man she married, not for the boy she loved, but for the silence she left behind. A soft, distant breeze continues. Temple bells faintly toll. Gentle waves rise and fall. Let your breath slow. Let your limbs rest. And if you dream, dream gently. For some love stories are not meant to be remembered, only felt in the dark. The Queen Who Fell in Love, a Greek myth sleep story. Welcome back, dear listener. Tonight, we wander the ruins of forgotten palaces and listen for echoes of the past. A love never meant to be, a desire that should have stayed buried, a curse born not from hate, but from the ache of being unseen. This is the story of Phaedra and Hippolytus. Let it lull you into the quiet folds of sleep. And if you listen closely, you may feel the whispers of their hearts, still beating beneath. Stone. There was once a palace built of silence. Its halls ran long, with cold marble beneath bare feet. Its torches flickered against faded mosaics, and within those walls, a queen sat alone. Her name was Phaedra. She was a daughter of kings, a woman born to labyrinths and legends. She knew the language of gods. She knew the weight of duty, and she knew how to swallow desire until it choked her. Phaedra had been given to a man of many stories, Theseus, the hero of Athens, the slayer of beasts, the man who had once taken her sister, Ariadne, only to leave her behind on an empty shore. Phaedra had married him because such things were expected, because queens did not choose who they loved. They were traded like treasure, and yet she tried to love him, tried to live in the city that had never truly welcomed her. But Athens was cold. Theseus was often gone, off to wars, to courts, to whispered affairs, and Phaedra, though she wore jewels and silk, felt less like a queen and more like an ornament. Waiting to dull, she spent her days walking the gardens alone. The sun kissed her shoulders, but it did not warm her. Even the birds grew quiet as she passed. And then one day she saw him, Hippolytus, not a boy, not quite yet a man, but already something cut from stone, that he moved like thunder held in a human body, that he rode horses with no fear, that he shot arrows without blinking. And he would not look at her. He was Theseus' son by another woman, illegitimate, yet revered, that a prince who rejected all things soft, that he worshipped Artemis, the virgin goddess. He had vowed never to love a woman, never to give in to the pull of flesh or emotion. But Phaedra watched him every day, every quiet passing, every stretch of his arm as he trained in the courtyard, every flash of his smile to the other boys, every moment he didn't see her. And in that not seeing, she began to want him. It started small. A glance held too long. A dream she couldn't shake. A scent of pine on the breeze that made her breath catch. She told herself it was madness, that it was the heat, that it was boredom, that she did not truly long for him. Not his youth, not his disdain, not his strength, but the heart does not obey logic, and the body obeys even less. She grew ill, her skin paled, her appetite disappeared. She no longer spoke at dinners, her hands trembled at her lap. The servants began to whisper that a fever, they said, that a spirit, the punishment from the gods. Only her old nurse knew the truth. In the quiet of her chamber, the nurse knelt beside her and said, "You are fading, child. Tell me what haunts you." And Phaedra, through cracked lips, whispered, "It is him." The nurse went still. She did not ask who. She already knew. "Forget him," the nurse begged. "This path ends in ruin." But Phaedra shook her head. "I cannot. It is already too late." She begged the nurse to speak to Hippolytus. Tio plead her heart. Tio asked if, by any chance, he might see her as a woman, not a queen. The nurse refused at first, but day by day, she watched Phaedra wither, and love, even when cursed, demands action. So the old woman went. She found Hippolytus by the sea cliffs, brushing his horse. She approached gently, spoke softly. She told him of the queen's sorrow, that of her beauty, of her ache, of the purity of her love. And Hippolytus recoiled, if struck, his face twisted with rage. "Do not bring this poison to me," he said. "I want no woman's desire. I am faithful to Artemis. I am untouched and will remain so." The nurse trembled. She tried to plead, but he stormed off, his footsteps pounding like thunder. The sea roared below, and the winds carried his curses back to the palace. When the nurse returned to Phaedra, her silence was enough. No hope, no chance, only shame. And in that shame, Phaedra unraveled. She could not bear the truth, could not bear to live with the flame she had tried to hide. And so, she wrote a letter, the final message. One last act of control. In it, she claimed Hippolytus had attacked her, that she had tried to resist, that she had been broken by his violence. And then, she took her own life. They found her cold, hair spread like ink over her pillow. The letter clutched in one hand, that a single tear dried on her cheek. When Theseus returned, he read the letter, and in a fury unlike any he had ever known, he called upon Poseidon. The god of the sea owed him 3 favors, and so Theseus used one, but he asked for punishment. For the boy who dared violate his queen, Poseidon listened, and he answered. The next morning, Hippolytus rode along the cliffs. The sea churned and a wave rose higher than the sky. A monstrous beast emerged, its roar splitting the air. The horses panicked, the chariot shattered. Hippolytus was thrown, dragged, broken, his body crushed upon the rocks. By the time the soldiers reached him, he was barely breathing. And in those final moments, he said nothing of the queen, nothing of betrayal, only, I was true. And then he closed his eyes, but the gods were not done. Artemis appeared that night to Theseus, a goddess of the hunt, cool, pale, unforgiving. You have wronged the innocent, she said. Your son was pure. He kept his vowed. It was your wife who lied. And now, both are gone. Theseus fell to his knees. Too late for apologies. Too late for forgiveness. The palace grew quiet once more. The sea calmed. But the stories remained. The whispers, the warnings, the ache. They say Phaedra's ghost still walks the corridors, her eyes forever searching. And Hippolytus is remembered not as a prince, but as a shadow that haunts the waves. And love becomes a thing we fear, not for what it gives, but for what it takes when it's cursed. Soft silence. Now let yourself drift, dear listener. Let the waves carry your thoughts. Let your breath slow. And remember, not all stories are meant to be rewritten. Some must simply be heard and released. Good night. The Curse of Echo and Narcissus. A sleep story of longing and vanity once. Long ago, the world was still quiet, before kingdoms rose, before mortals named the stars. There were only voices, and one voice echoed forever. Her name was Echo. She was a nymph, born of the woods and winds. She was laughter beneath the trees. She was whispers through the moss. She sang to deer, to rivers, to stones that remembered the touch of time. She did not need a home, for the forest loved her. She did not need company, for she lived in every voice but her own. And that was her curse. For Echo had once angered Hera, the queen of the gods. The stories say Echo used to talk endlessly, so charming, so clever, that she could distract even the gods themselves. When Hera sought to spy on Zeus, Echo would chatter, delaying her, protecting him. But gods do not tolerate trickery. When Hera discovered the deception, she did not kill Echo de No. She cursed her. You will keep your voice, she said, but not your words. From now on, you may only repeat what others say. No thought may be your OWN, no confession, no truth. And so Echo was silenced in the most cruel of ways. She could speak, but never begin. She could mimic, but never express. And so she faded into solitude, half seen, half heard, always listening. Until the day she saw him, he was walking beside a still lake, barefoot in the morning mist. The sun had not yet burned through the fog, but he walked as though it parted for him. His name was Narcissus, a mortal boy, blessed and doomed. The gods had given him beauty too sharp, too flawless, a face carved by longing itself, golden curls, skin that glowed, eyes like stormlight. But he had never loved, not others, not even himself. Yet, many had tried. Boys, girls, spirits, gods in disguise. But Narcissus had turned away, each heart with ice in his gaze, and Echo watched him, from behind trees, from beneath branches, and her silence grew heavier than ever before. She followed him, not close enough to be seen, just near enough to memorize the rhythm of his steps. She longed to call to him, ask his name, tell him. She had heard him long before she'd seen him, but she couldn't begin. She could only repeat, so she waited. And one day, she got her chance. Narcissus wandered deeper into the woods that he called out, "Is anyone here?" And from behind the trees, Echo whispered, "Here." He paused, he looked around. "Come to me," he said. "Come to me." She echoed, a smile tugged at his lips. He stepped toward the sound. "Why do you hide?" "Hide?" He frowned now. "Who are you?" "You." He turned, frustrated. "What game is this?" This, and then he saw her, pale and trembling, stepping into the light like a shadow becoming flesh, eyes full of pleading, hands outstretched, mouth trembling with words she would never form. She reached for him, her body trembling with hope and sorrow. But Narcissus stepped back. "No," he said. She froze. "I will not be hunted," he continued. "I want no one, not even you." And then he turned and left. Echo stood there, empty, exposed, at a soul without a voice, turned away, and she wept. Her cries bounced between the trees, her own voice returning like mockery. She fled, deeper into the forest, away from light, until only bones and sighs remained. They say her body faded slowly. She became only sound, only echoes, her love, cursed to never be heard. But the gods watched. And they were not kind to Narcissus either, for they saw his pride, his cruelty, his coldness, so they wove a trap, not with rope, but with reflection. One day, Narcissus came upon a pool of water, still, perfect, unbroken. He knelt beside it and saw a face, and the face took his breath, golden hair, eyes like the sky just before rain, lips so soft they must have been carved by desire itself. He reached to touch it. The image rippled, he gasped, he waited, and it returned. Again and again he spoke. "Who are you?" And the pool said nothing. He whispered, "Come to me." And somewhere in the trees, Echo whispered back, "Come to me." But he did not hear her. His gaze was trapped. He fell in love with himself, and it consumed him. He refused to eat, refused to sleep, refused to move from that place. He leaned in, trying to kiss the image. Only water met his lips. He wept, and the face wept too. And as he withered, Echo watched. She wanted to turn away, but love, even cursed, remains loyal. She stayed, until the light left his eyes, until the pool stilled forever. In that spot, a flower bloomed, bright white petals, golden center, leaning always toward its own reflection. They called it the Narcissus, the symbol of beauty and of the danger of loving only what you see. Echo still lingers. In caves. In mountains. In the ache of your own voice returned, not for vengeance, but because love, once given, never truly leaves, even if no one hears it, even if it was never returned, even if all that remains is an echo. Soft breeze fades in, gentle water laps at stone. Now close your eyes, dear listener. Let the quiet take you. Let your breath slow. Let the sorrow become peace, and the pain become sleep. Because even cursed love stories can become lullabies. Good night. Celine and Endymion. The love that slept forever theme. Immortal love, divine obsession. eternal slumber tone, lyrical, calm, deeply emotional format, audiobook style, no narrator, perfect for sleep stories length, 10,000 words, approximate 60 to 70 minutes listening time, written without narrator cues, all prose soft night wind, distant crickets, gentle moonlight hums in the dark sky. She was the moon, not the silver dot in the sky, not to the mortals, but the goddess who pulled light across the heavens. Selene, a daughter of the Titans, born before time, with silver in her veins and eternity in her eyes. Each night, she rode her chariot across the dark sky, her white horses galloping over the clouds. She brought coolness to the earth, gave sleep to the weary, and cast her pale gaze upon the world below. But with immortality comes loneliness, and Selene was alone. The stars could not speak. The gods had their wars. The mortals, brief flickers in the wind, loved and died too quickly for her, until one night she saw him, sleeping beneath a tree, his chest rising and falling like a soft tide. A shepherd, Endymion. His beauty was quiet, not godlike, not burning, but calm. The way his fingers curled in the grass, the way the moonlight softened on his skin, the way his lips parted slightly in sleep. Selene had seen 1,000 faces, but none like his, and she stopped her chariot mid-sky, mid-flight, and watched. Night after night, she returned. While mortals dreamed, she studied his breath, his lashes, the gentle dreams dancing behind his closed lids. And one night, she descended, feet touching the earth like a sigh, wind curling around her like silk. She stood over him and whispered, "Do not wake." And he didn't. Endymion remained still. She lay beside him, touched his face, traced the outline of his palm with her moonlight, and loved him in silence. But the gods noticed. The moon had stopped in the sky. Time itself had slowed. Zeus called her to Olympus. "What have you done?" he demanded. "I've loved," Selene answered, her voice a soft chime. Zeus saw the danger, the imbalance, but Selene begged, "Let him sleep. Let him remain. I will not disturb the world. Only let me have this." The king of gods paused, and then, with a flick of divine will, he granted it. Endymion would sleep. Forever no aging, no pain, no death, but no waking in eternal dream. A lover frozen beneath time. Selene returned that night and saw him unchanged. She wept, tears of light that dripped across the forest, but she lay beside him again and again and again, for nights beyond counting. When the moon was full, it was because she hovered closest. When it waned, she retreated to grieve. She bore him 50 daughters, all born in dreams that half mortal, half divine. They danced in the sky as streaks of moonlight, but Selene never stopped, returning to him. Her love became a ritual. Each night, she descended, brushed his hair, kissed the corner of his mouth, whispered secrets only the stars could hear, and Endymion slept on to in perfect peace, in endless silence. Some say she was cursed with love, others say she chose it, but whichever truth you believe, Selene and Endymion were forever bound. Point one immortal, point one asleep, point one watching, point one dreaming. They say when the moon looks especially low in the sky, it's her, curled beside him, her cheek resting on his chest. And if you listen closely in the quiet of night, you may hear her whispering, "I would rather love you and sleep forever than wake and lose you once." Soft wind brushes through tall grass. The stars shimmer faintly above. A deep silence drapes the earth. You can close your eyes now. Let the moonlight settle on your thoughts. Let the sadness melt into softness. Let your breath match the rhythm of sleeping gods, because some love stories are not meant to awaken. Good night. Echo and Narcissus. Let the world quiet. Let the hush of ancient woods and forgotten gods settle into your chest like a long breath before sleep. You are entering a realm of myth and memory, where love is an echo and beauty reflects forever. She wandered the forests, her footsteps silent as snowfall, her voice stolen by gods, echoed at a nymph of the mountains, a creature of laughter once. Her words fluttered like birds, charming every god and mortal who passed. But fate grew jealous, and Hera, queen of Olympus, cursed her tongue with silence. From now on, the goddess decreed, you may speak only the last words spoken to you, no thought of your OW and no cry of your heart, only the shadows of another's voice. Echo fled. She vanished into the trees, into the cliffs, into the wind, where none could see her sorrow. She became the ghost of speech, the whisper in canyons, the reply that was never quite right. And yet, she still felt, still dreamed, still yearned for something more. And one day, he appeared, Narcissus, the son of a river god and a nymph, a boy molded by perfection, with golden hair kissed by sunlight and eyes that dared the skies for beauty. He walked through the woods like he belonged to them, like the world bent around his beauty, like time slowed when he passed. An echo saw him, from behind a tree, from under a leaf, from the hush between heartbeats. She watched him kneel to drink from a stream, watched the light shimmer on his cheek, watched the way he did not see the flowers he crushed beneath his heel. She followed him. Days passed, or moments, or lifetimes. Time meant nothing when she watched him. Her love grew, wild, helpless, and tangled like ivy. And though she could not speak first, she longed to answer his heart. If only he would call point one day, he did. Is someone there? He asked, turning sharply, his voice brushing the trees, and she, hiding behind bark and breath, whispered, someone there. His brow furrowed. Come to me, he said, stepping forward. To me, she breathed. He spun around. Why do you hide? Show yourself. Yourself, she murmured, and at last, trembling with hope, she stepped from the shadows, hands outstretched, eyes wide, her silent love gleaming in her chest. But he recoiled. No, he cried. Away from me. From me. She echoed, frozen. Disgust twisted his perfect face. He turned and ran. An echo shattered. She crumbled where she stood, her body folding into the moss, her heart sinking into the soil. She faded, bit by bit, until only her voice remained, soft, hopeless, waiting. The mountains mourned her, the wind carried her name in secret. But Narcissus walked on, unaware of the love that had followed him through the trees, unaware of the curse he now carried. For Nemesis, the goddess of divine justice, had been watching. She had seen his pride, his cruelty, the way he crushed hearts like petals beneath his feet. She marked him, not with pain, not with blood, but with reflection. Point one day, Narcissus came to a pool in the woods, clear, still water, untouched by time that he bent to drink, and saw a face to beauty beyond imagining, eyes soft and glowing, lips slightly parted, hair that drifted like sunlight through leaves. He gasped. Who are you? He whispered. Who are you? The forest replied that he reached. The image rippled that he waited. The image returned. Day after day, night after night, he returned to that pooled, no sleep, no food, no thirst, but the hunger in his eyes that he had fallen, not for a person, but for the illusion of himself that he tried to kiss the reflection that it vanished, he cried. The tears blurred the water. Still the face returned that he did not leave. The earth grew quiet around him. Birdsong faded. Even the breeze seemed afraid to disturb his obsession that he whispered sweet. Nothing's to the still water. Stay with me, he begged. With me? Echo whispered, far away. But he never heard her point one morning. The reflection no longer appeared. Only stillness. Only silence. And beneath that silence, a single white flower bloomed, leaning over the pool like a question. The narcissus, born of longing, fed by illusion, forever bent toward its own reflection. Echo remained, not as flesh, not as face, but as breath between stones. She called his name in the caves, whispered it in valleys. Narcissus, sus, us. And when lovers speak sweetly in forests, or shout to hear themselves reply, they speak with her voice that a reminder that love, when unreturned, can echo forever. Now, let your thoughts drift like her voice through trees. Let the hush of ancient woods soften your chest. Let sleep carry you gently into dreams where even the cursed find rest.